Yeah, I've never figured that out. So I always have to hunt for it.
Yeah.
Um, I was able, let me try to check this in actually. But I was able to, so I guess to give an update before we get started, Jeff and I had a follow-up call with PCI Security Standards Council, and they are in the process of making, I'm going to put this in air quotes, machine readable. They're creating spreadsheets of all of their standards. And the first one that they have provided us is the Secure SLC 1.1, I think it is, Secure SLC 1.1 standard. And I was able to write a kind of a quick and dirty Python script to actually generate a CycloneDX 1.6 bomb from that. So that is done. I'll check that in just a little bit. I do have an outstanding question to the PCI folks, specifically around license. So, because I'd like to identify what license this is actually supplied under, and then incorporate that license text in the bomb itself. So I think that should follow. Um, there's a few things about the PCI SLC, secure SLC that I had a question on. One is specific to secure SLC, I guess. Well, not really specific, but because other standards have this too. Number one is guidance. So they've got they've got a requirement, and then beside it, they'll have some guidance about that requirement. And we don't necessarily have, and I'm pretty sure we talked about this at one point in time, but I don't see guidance in the spec anywhere. And I don't know if we excluded it on purpose or what we decided to do with that. Because I putting it as a sub requirement just seems wrong to me because it's not actually a requirement.
No, usually, I mean, in the PCI in particular, it like explains the requirement, it provides context, maybe examples. Um,
Don't we have description?
Yeah, I think we had it, and we had it as like as an array, so you could have like sets of like guidance or other descriptive text.
Let me see. Did I miss that? As I was doing the conversion, I might have. It was probably late at night.
better fix up that Python.
I actually just didn't include it right now. So I'm not including the guidance because I didn't know where to put it. Where the hell is my spec repo specification?
Because I had a similar thing for the SSDF, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Requirements, I've got, let's see, identifier, title, text. I don't have an array of descriptions.
Uh-oh.
No. But I do remember that conversation.
Yeah.
So I will add an array of descriptions. I will add that to the spec after this call. That makes a lot of sense because yeah, you're right. We did talk about this because we chose not to use the word guidance because some specs might call it something else. Okay. I'll go ahead and make that change, and then once I do, I'll add the guidance to my script and get that checked in later today. So yay, we made progress.
Right.
I think maybe we can do that
At
because
least
I'm
one.
looking. I'm not seeing it on SSDF either. So I know I had the same problem with SSDF.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. So let me know when that's
Okay.
in the spec, and I'll make that change too.
All right, we'll do. And the other thing that might be a good addition is, so for the spec, we've got basically standards, and then you can have a bunch of requirements, and those requirements can have parents and that sort of thing. But what I'm thinking of in terms of like an end user use case, right? If you are familiar with PCI, then you're going to know that maybe the top level of a standard is called an objective, and maybe that middle part is called something else, and that last part is actually the requirement. So what I was thinking about having is a native label. What does the spec call this particular requirement?
Hmm. Is it by tiers? Like, so you'd say like level 1 native is called the objective, level 2 native is I don't know, the requirement, level 3 is the I don't know.
Well, it wasn't, I mean, it's not
Sub-spec.
levels. Yeah, it's not levels like we have in the spec, because that's really more of a complexity thing. But in terms of the hierarchy, right? In terms of the hierarchy, what I was going to
Oh,
propose,
sorry, you're right. I didn't mean levels. I meant hierarchy, like level 1 requirements are called
right.
X, level, or supporting requirements are called something else.
So what I was going
Yeah,
to
that's
do
cool.
is possibly just add a field, and there will be a little bit of duplication, but I think it's okay. Add a field to the requirement object called like native label or native something or other. That way, like the 1.0s and the 2.0s, the 3.0s, they'll all have the same thing of objective.
Right.
And
So,
then the 1.1s will have, something else. The 1.1.1s will actually have a label called requirement.
so do we want to standardize that with like a native label, or should we give that give a free key value blob? For example, a concept called tags. So you use the tags to get any number of key value pairs or native mapping you want into it, but it's not controlled by the specific or the CycloneDX specification, but it gives the users a flexibility to add any key value pair. Is that what we want, or is it like native label is like a fixed schema in our requirements, which says if you have a native label, you can put it here?
Well, I think we can already can you do properties on there? Actually, you can't. We should probably add that. Yeah, I'll add that as well. So we can do properties, which is the key value pairs.
Right.
I'll add that. Properties.
So if you have
That
a
eliminates the
properties,
need for this thing the native thing you're talking about. Because I wouldn't want to tag every requirement.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just nice to have a global scheme. And you might consider a level 0 as well, which describes the whole set of requirements. Because in the common criteria, a set of requirements is called a protection profile or a security target. In PCI, there's a web security module. And I think there's going to be other modules that plug into the SSS. So like for technical areas. And so you might want to say like level 0, it's a module. And then
Right.
level 1 in there is the objectives of the module, and level 2, not, I'm saying level again, but like 1.1 is like requirements of the objective of the module.
Right. Right.
So I'd say stuff here just, again, for me, trying to understand it relates to something that I'm dealing with. So, we have identifier, which is, I'll say like native spec identifier. Would we want to maybe change the naming there? But in some ways, I see like that would probably be part of this identifier. I guess I'm trying to understand what is the value from like a machine readable perspective, or like what would be the thing that you would do with that?
It wouldn't be any value for machine readable. What I was
Yeah.
envisioning was a human consumption use case. where you might have like, imagine like an auditor, right? And they're getting all their standards in the future via a machine readable format. And they're talking to maybe another auditor. They go to objective such and such, but they can't find the word objective, right? Because in their system, it says everything's a requirement. If we had a way to say that this is called an objective or called a module or called something else natively in that standard, then we could help that auditor actually find what it is that they're looking for. So it has nothing to do with machine readability. It's more of the human use case that I was thinking about.
Okay. Oh, no, I get that. That makes sense. Yeah, I think in that scenario, then maybe identifier would not be enough.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
perfect the way it is. I just, we could use properties for this, I guess, as Manoj brought up. I'm going
That
to
puts a lot
add
of burden on the standard creator, like whoever's doing the job you're doing now. They have to
Mhm.
get it right everywhere. If you just create these native tiers, it's easy. You just do it one place and then everything's automatic.
We don't have that in the spec though right now.
No, no,
So
we should add it though.
we don't have,
I'm for it.
we'd have to design it. But is that something we want to do for minimal viable, or is that something we want to do at a future point?
Doesn't seem too complicated. I mean, I'm just saying like, it's not, I don't know, I wonder if it would be hard to add later because we may get a bunch of draft standards and if they don't have it, then it's kind of a pain. It's not critical.
Yeah, I mean, for the scripts that we've got for SSDF and for PCI, I mean, we can automate this in our
Yeah.
scripts, so there's not going to be any human error because we'll know that at certain levels they're called certain things. We could I'm going to add support for properties. I think that's oversight. But using properties for this purpose just kind of feels wrong to me.
So if we did the properties aspect of it, I mean, there's clearly custom properties, but would you then expect there to be corresponding taxonomy for those? That would have to be, because this is me getting a little fuzzy. In CycloneDX, there's a taxonomy definition, right? Where you
Right.
have, so we would maybe want to stub out some of that.
If we decided to use properties, then yes, we'd have to stub that out.
Okay.
Yeah. So we could do CDX, standards, I don't know what we would even call them. Requirements label, right? That could be like the part of the taxonomy that we define.
If we want to define a taxonomy, we are already standardizing the properties. If it's not a free key value pair at that point, right? So it's like the idea of properties is to have customizable from the users, right? So like I guess that in itself means that we are having a defined schema for the native label. That in that case we can just add it to the schema. So properties would be helpful if it's a free customizable set of key value pairs. If it's not, if you're standardizing it, it might as well be in the schema, and it gives a clear picture for the user.
I think the pushback I have on that though is like, do we want to allow the flexibility of properties within this area of the overall schema? And if if we say yes, and we go ahead and create properties, well, then do we want to have the specific fields and properties, or just keep it in the properties? Or are we opening up, a can of worms where people do a whole bunch of stuff? I don't know if that's happened. The general consensus is on properties within the CycloneDX community.
the one thing what we can do is just not include them. Right now, they're not included. And if there's a big, need for it. I mean, it's easy to add things to a spec. It's a lot harder to take things away. So we can not include it. I'm completely fine with that. That's the way it's designed now. And we could do like a native label type of thing. And then based on feedback for who's using it, if there's like, I don't know, a demand for including, hey, this requirement is found on page 256 of this manual type of thing. Well, then that would be a clear case for the use of properties.
So I to counterpoint to Ian, I mean, if I think of it, if we have a very strict, if properties gives us a flexible way of extending the specification, and if people start using the properties for a certain case again and again and again, that becomes a way for us to standardize. Or you can like that is a key point or key data point for us to say that, okay, this field is being used across all properties, then we should start using it, standardizing it. You can say it that way, or properties kind of suppress all the data points, or people will not come to us with feedback. They will just start using properties, and we will never hear about all the extra cases. You can, I guess, have both ways. I don't know which way is the most common though.
Yeah, I mean, my vote would be properties, just because like it drives consistency with other areas of CycloneDX spec.
Okay.
Okay. And I think to your point, there's probably use cases we haven't thought of, and
Yep.
properties is a good way to shoestring everything into CycloneDX. So
Right.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
See you, Jeff.
All right, see y'all.
take it easy.
Okay, so we've got a thumbs up for properties in the requirements.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think your use case is a good example of maybe a first taxonomy item to add.
And in terms of like a native label, is that, where are we falling with that? Is that a property? Is that part of the spec?
I would prefer, my thought would be property and maybe native type. When I hear label, it may be, so I could see someone putting something unique for every single requirement. I maybe, I don't know. You know what I mean? When I hear label, I think some people could easily mix it up with a identifier. I guess for us, when we use, I think labels like, yeah, GitHub labels like that, but I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to think of it that way.
Right. Yeah, I don't even know what we call that. Yeah, I honestly don't know.
Native category, native.
Well, I guess the good thing is that if we just offload it to properties, we can work on that outside of this group, I guess. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
so, yay. But in all reality, Ian, we should probably figure that out sooner rather than later, because I know SSDF has them, the PCI stuff has them. So,
I'll go ahead and create an issue, and then
okay, yeah, that'd be
work
great.
it offline.
Okay, all right, sounds good. So I'll add description, an array of descriptions, and then I'll add properties to the spec. I'll probably, does the standards themselves also have properties? If not, they probably should. Let's see. No, they don't. I'm gonna add them there too. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll get that done today, and then as soon as I check in the descriptions array, Ian, I'll let you know. So you can update the SSDF stuff because that they have that's the column of the spreadsheet that has like all the examples, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. And then as soon as I get that done, I'll let you know. And then I'll also check in the PCI Council. What is it called again? They have so many standards. I had no idea they had this many standards. What is it called? What's in my other window? Secure SLC, which is the PCI Secure Software Lifecycle Requirements and Assessment Procedures. So I'll go ahead and check that in later today too. So that was the update, which then led to that discussion. I guess question to the group, has anyone tried to actually use the attestation part of this yet?
No, I
I have
haven't.
not.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to be working on it at my employer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Specifically for specifically for SSDF. And what was the Australian one too? There's an Australian one that's kind of similar. We're going to be doing it for Australia too. One thing I'm going to bring up at my employer is we get ASVS attestations for every single release of the ServiceNow platform. We certify everything as ASVS level 2 or higher. And I'm going to talk with the team that's actually responsible for doing that to see if we can start getting machine readable versions of those attestations in the future. Because what better way to have somebody test it than to actually like do something that has 15 million lines of code, and so we'll see if it works. But unfortunately we'll have to wait
Let
a
us
while for
know
that.
if we can help, like
Okay.
kind of bridge the gap in understanding attestation specification for the team anytime.
Okay.
It'll be,
Is anybody else doing ASVS that has like external verification of that?
I'm not sure. I can check with my previous like Microsoft colleagues if they are trying to do any.
Okay. Because we have ASVS represented in CycloneDX. It's certainly one of the most popular verification standards. Many orgs use it for not only just like requirements, like definition of done needs to have X, Y, and Z, but for security testing as well. So these are the things that we actually test for to verify that development actually did what they said they were going to do. You know what? I'll ping the ASVS folks in their Slack channel as well and see if anybody's interested in helping us test this. I think that might be a good exercise as well. So I'll make a note to do that.
On a high level, what do you also consider like the overall like next steps or things that are coming up in the next couple of weeks that we need to be focusing on? I think getting the user guide together is kind of a
Yes.
priority pretty quick. I know there's a blog post you mentioned. I apologize, I don't remember her name, but she's working on that sometime in the next couple of weeks. What are the other big items that we want to tackle? I know, I know you got an invite to it, like the Jason Weiss
Yep.
Attestation Consortium Summit thing.
Yep.
Got delayed, so maybe now you can show it in person.
Exactly.
Yeah. What else is there on the radar, things that we want to just be like making sure we get a timeline set up as we come towards the end of the year?
I think the guide is probably the biggest lift.
Okay.
I really do, because it's going to be, I think initially people like us are probably going to read it, but truly the end users of this are going to be folks completely outside of our circles, usually the audit and compliance folks and those types of individuals. So we'll have to write with that in mind, which is fine. I mean, we can do that, but I wrote the not all of it, obviously, because I'm dyslexic, and that would just not be possible. But I did wrote a good section of the authoritative guide to SBOM based on a lot of people's feedback and stuff like that. And it, it it took a really long time. Grammarly was my best friend.
Mhm.
But it took an insane amount of time to get something that actually was accurate, that was readable, that resonated with the people reading it. So the guide is, yeah, it's probably going to be almost as much work as putting together the spec, in my opinion, because we're going to need to create not just the words, but we'll have to create examples, we'll have to create illustrations and that sort of thing, because different learners, different styles of learning. The blog post, so there's a cryptography blog post going out in the next day or two. Kayla has already got a rough draft of the blog post for the attestation work. As soon as she gets that a little bit further along, she's going to share it with me, you, Ian. I know she was hopefully looking for a quote from you for that at some point in time.
Yeah, I got my leadership approval to do it, so I'm just going through the corporate comms team.
I
Force, I
understand.
think.
Yep, I get it. And yeah, I think the guides, I mean, if we want to start on the guides like right away, I think that would be something that we could absolutely do. Because the exercise of going through those guides will actually help us think about use cases that we might not have even considered yet. So in the process of doing it, we might actually find some limitations in what it is that we developed. So
That's good.
always fun too.
That seems like
Let me
maybe
know
a
if
good
I
place
can
we can
help
pick
you.
up. Oh, absolutely.
that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's a good place to start maybe next week, is jointly just
Yeah.
kind of lay out maybe an overall section by section, how we want to lay it out, and then tag team different pieces.
No, that sounds great. Coming up with the sections was also very difficult. It's like, what order do I really want to place these things in? Yes. And I don't even quite honestly know how to approach attestations. I mean, because you can't talk about attestations without talking about the standards and requirements first. So we've got a couple different chicken and egg problems here. We got, the machine readable aspect. Nobody's doing it because it doesn't exist. And then you got you can't machine readably attest to something that you can't have a machine readable implementation of. So, yeah. So we'll probably have to lead off with the standards would be my guess. What did I call it? I don't even know what I called the guide, and I was just trying to come up with a name that wasn't horrible. That was my goal. Something that wasn't horrible. Where's the guides? There's my guides. Too many windows open. Okay, so I called it the authoritative guide to attestations. Implement machine readable standards and requirements to digitally transform audit and attestation workflows. So
That's great.
that's the title and subtitle that we currently have. That's obviously up for debate.
Yeah, you know, you and I have slightly different approaches. I appreciate your kind of, and I tend to agree with your view that like, hey, if I'm going to focus on my little ecosystem, I'm going to focus on doing my thing really well. I know how much that's going to really annoy people in some of the other ecosystems, and I know I'm going to get some questions about it. So,
Yeah,
but you want to build coalitions, you don't want to build Noah's Ark. You can't do both. So,
exactly.
yeah, that'd be my only concern is I'm trying to stitch this. I'm trying to stitch between SBOM and Toto and this like a cohesive workflow based on where our tooling is going, and it's going to be challenging. So,
Job security.
I guess that's true.
Oh, but yeah, I think you should have. You know what? I'm gonna talk to your boss. I think SBOM should be part of your title.
Please no, man. Now, anytime anything SBOM comes up in the company, I immediately get forwarded and
Yeah.
ask for an opinion piece on it. I'm sure you do the same. It's just
Yeah.
like with this new like DeFi, like the second it came out, I had 3 different lawyers asking me opinions, and I'm like, guys, I haven't even had a chance to read it yet. Like, give me a second here, you know, like.
I just read the commentary on LinkedIn. That's all I've read.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sure our lawyers are looking at it though. But yeah, the interesting thing about I think a lot of the work that we're doing with supply chain is that, and this is the challenging part in my opinion, is that the supply chain, the digital supply chain is so utterly massive. I mean, like OSSF, they've got their little threat model of it, and by little, I you know, it's big, but it's still a fraction of the actual software supply chain. And when you take a look at it holistically, it's just too much to absorb. So you have all these little pockets of communities that are kind of working on their own little view of what a software or digital supply chain actually means to them. And a lot of times there isn't a lot of cross pollination of ideas and stuff like that. And it's just not possible for people to attend all the working groups. You know, you'd never
yeah.
get any stuff done in your day job if you did. So, yeah, there's just too much between all the CISA stuff. Other world governments have got it. You know, the OSSF's got theirs. We've got a bunch in our camp. You've got IETF. You're going to have one other group soon. So I mean, there's just too much. So
And that other group is what you alluded to in your message to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree.
So.
And I think the hard part, I think, is also, I think for maybe I'd love to, again, this is going way off, of course. Any advice on that? I'm having a hard time energizing folks to be like passionate about the subject in a sense, like it's a really great career opportunity, and there's like this is going to be around for a while, and like there's a few opportunities in life where you're like if you can be an early adopter, like it can shape a totally different career path for you and like give you all sorts of opportunities. And I see secure software supply chain, especially with the federal government coming in, is like a ripe opportunity for the younger engineers in my org to jump in and be involved and be a thought leader. And it's engineers and like they really, myself included, you just need to learn how to like get out of your skin and like get out of the code and go see the bigger problem and go talk to people. And I really struggle with coaching people like how to like do that. A lot of people kind of want to be spoon fed, and you can't be spoon fed into these communities. You have to show up, you have to be present, you have to be engaged without any
ready for the fire hose. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been thinking about doing the intern model.
Mhm.
People talk about, it's funny, people ask about, well, how do I break into cyber? Um, and the fact that we have a job shortage, which we don't really have, we just have we have an inability to hire good people because, we ask for certain types of um, requirements without actually having personality as one of these. Like, for example, like I hire people regularly that may not necessarily have like a cyber degree or whatever. They certainly didn't exist when I was going to school, but I'm a lot more interested in people that actually um, like to find hidden truths, that want
Mhm.
to discover new things, because these are the types of personalities that really make great security people. Um, and if you can find like interns that kind of have that same kind of passion, that same kind of drive to discover hidden truths, they're going to be like epically good at all the supply chain stuff.
Mhm.
And probably taking the fire hose at the same time. Um,
I've had, in I think a similar vein, I've had really good luck hiring people who come from like a help desk perspective.
oh,
People who do a
interesting.
really good job like debugging and like diving in and understanding like an end user's real problem and like will drive it to closure. Have that
Yeah.
same kind of methodology to life.
Yeah. 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 Especially the folks that are not necessarily interested in like just closing the ticket, but the ones that are truly trying to get to the root cause of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. That'd probably be good too. Yeah, I don't know. We're all kind of in our little silos. CISA, I view that as a silo, right? Because they're just talking about software, and it's so much bigger than that. Um, the fact that IoT's a thing, from what I understand, and anyway, I digress. But
Yeah.
there's so many different communities, and it's impossible to attend everything. It's impossible to. I mean, I actually met in person yesterday Ricardo, who's the lead of the
Mhm.
one of these CISA working
That's what I'm
groups, right?
sharing. Yeah. I work with
Yeah,
him
yeah.
on
Oh, do you?
SBOM Primer. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, yeah. So, I met him in person. He just happened to be in Chicago for his day job. We met up at ServiceNow. Um, and he was telling me the sharing working group has a subgroup that meets like every Wednesday. I didn't even know about it. It's going to tie into some of this other work that we're going to be working on. So, yeah, I'm
It,
going to
it,
attend another
it,
one.
yeah. So yeah, that's I have been participating into that, and I dialed back my participation, and I just focus on writing the document because like
Okay.
anything, there's the problem I have. I think I know it's recorded. Like this is like common for knowledge here. Like the system working groups are very much just echo chamber of, I'll say,
Yeah.
maybe more traditional software vendors not selling their products but trying to justify their use cases more than
Right.
anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And um, a lot of those work streams, and again, I think that's why I appreciate working with you and other folks in this arena that are much more on a technical level, is
Mm,
because we're working on technical solutions to the problem versus like, okay, well, I might be a little bit higher up in management. I haven't actually touched code for a while. I'm talking more theoretically, and I want to document the theoretical use case. And
right.
like, and I've struggled with that a lot in the system streams where it's like, I understand your opinion, I understand where you're coming from, like, but like again, to your point, that's such a small portion of the overall picture that like
Hmm.
I don't really care about the workflow about how someone signs an NDA when sharing an SBOM. Like
Right.
you guys go figure that out. That is not what I care about in this equation. I care about like what's the tool that's going to allow me to do it? What's the protocol? What's the authentication method going to look like? How am I going to make this like scale to a large enterprise? Like that's what I care
Right.
about. And a lot of
Yeah.
folks are very like in that minutia around, like I'll say like business logic. That's where they
Hmm.
care. I
Right.
like this value in that, but like, is that where my head's at?
Exactly.
fix the
Business
radar.
logic is not going to allow you to scale,
Yeah.
especially at your level. I mean, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's probably, I don't know, only a dozen or so, I would guess anyway. There's probably only a dozen or so vendors to USG that has the kind of scale that you guys do. Everybody
Yeah.
else is like software vendors, and they maybe have a few dozen, maybe even a few hundred, even 1,000 products, but nothing like the scale that you guys are operating at. So
Yeah, and I think our hardest problem right now that I'm dealing with is like international trade compliance around SBOMs, because we support multi-billion-dollar efforts in Australia, UK, Canada, Japan, Poland,
right.
and like that's where a lot of my head is at right now. Is like international trade compliance, and where does ITC fit in? Like export controlled information fit into SBOMs and what it can share and whatnot around all of that.
Right,
Huge
right,
part of
right,
where
right.
a problem that I have to dig out of the side of my pockets right now. So.
Oh, I think I'm gonna buy you a cape that says S-bomb addict for Christmas.
I know, right? Yeah. Well,
But
well, I don't know.
that's-
Hopefully, you're considering going to KubeCon since it's in your hometown.
yeah,
Maybe.
I should hopefully be there. I'm also going to be at I'll be in DC for the AppSec OWASP AppSec Global, which is let's see, the Threat Model Con I think is October 29th, and then AppSec Global DC is the 30th and 31st, I think. So I'll be there for that. So if you'll be around, I mean, it's kind of sucks that it's on Halloween, but yeah.
I'm not going to be. I'm trying to stay out of travel as much as possible, but I'll probably
This
do
is the
KubeCon.
Okay. This is the first
And,
conference I've been to since before COVID, so I just haven't gone to any.
Yeah,
I met
don't
up with
blame you.
the SPDX folks in what was that, Austin, like a year or two ago, just to kind of sit down for a meeting, but that was literally the only time I ever went to a conference before COVID. So
Yeah, I'll say that the CNCF like conferences in general, like the Linux Foundation ones, they've been pretty good about like fairly strict like COVID protocol on things. But even then, like I know like 5 or 6 people on my team who all came back with COVID. So
I just got my booster shot the other day.
I did
the new
too.
Vaccine. So we'll see.
I was down for the count. Like,
were you?
Yeah, I was like a solid day of like
really
down. Yeah.
It's funny because the last one that I had, like, I don't know, 8 months ago, I was down.
Same.
This one,
that one was on. Yeah, that one I was totally fine. This one I was pretty much down.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny how it affects people differently.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'll let you know once the stuff is checked in, and yeah, good progress today. And then yeah, I'm looking forward to starting the guides. I think you have access to the repo.
Correct.
And then I think what we'll do is just, like as you said, like start on the sections next week. We'll start on the sections, and then start breaking down like what it is that we want to talk about in each section, and start going from there.
Okay. I apologize. I'm going to totally pull something random on you. So I'm working on like my employer's terms and conditions. So those are going to be, they are formally released, and I think we're going to like really broadcast them out pretty strongly in probably a month or so. And it's like, you're going to use CycloneDX 1.5 with these fields. Like that is what you as a supplier are going to have to provide us. I'm going to try to get my executive leadership to be very vocal about that on social media. I don't know what cross communication you'd be willing to see happen, or who I would talk to within OWASP, either to repost or
yeah, I'll get it to happen. Yeah, I'll get it to happen. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, let me know how I can support that. Otherwise, if you just give me links to things, I'll make sure that OWASP, who has I think like 200,000 plus followers on Twitter, we can amplify that kind of messaging. And if you want to do like a blog post on like OWASP.org, whether it's your byline or somebody else's byline, we'd be happy to do that as well.
Okay. Yeah, let me talk
keep that open as an option.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Again, two reasons. One, I want my rest, like, just because I'm saying it and my executives say it, like I want the rest of my company to follow in line, and like having a very local external communication help
Yeah.
facilitate that. And then clearly, like, we want to show alignment to our customer. So
Yeah. And if there's
that'd be
something that
wonderful.
we can maybe get permission, maybe get permission to maybe use or reuse some of the messaging if it becomes public. That way we can put it on the website, that sort of thing. That would be really beneficial. Has your team, has your, I'm assuming you have the evidence, but do you know of the existence of like an internal case study or anything like that on the use of Cyclone and what it's allowed you to do? Because it's one thing to like mandate something for you and your suppliers. It's another thing to
Sure.
say, this is the value that we've derived from doing this, and this is why we're doing it.
We have not put a formal case study together. We do have internal metrics that we track. And I'll say, like, CycloneDX is, I'll say, like, ground truth for a lot of our CVE alerting and monitoring. It's a ground truth for all of our license compliance. It's effectively like how we do business for software.
Interesting.
So when, like, a lot of the work we've been doing, like open sourcing tools around like Hopper and like
Right.
Hopper Cop and that ecosystem, like,
Yeah.
that's all deeply woven into how we do business today. And
Got
so we have a lot of like OKRs around that we monitor and track, but we haven't put like a formal case study together. Mainly because we're in a lucky position where we don't have to convince anyone to go do this, and therefore we kind of have the leeway just to go do it under the ostriches of upon high. So
Got it. I got another random question for you, I guess, since we're on this topic. One of the, I know the other spec, they've gone down that, of course, they've always been down the RDF path, which we just don't really like. One of the reasons why, especially for JSON LD, we don't do it is because it's going to greatly affect the inability to parse and understand the schema in disconnected environments. I know Hopper, for example, is designed to be used in that kind of air-gapped environment. What is one of the things that we are thinking about architecturally, maybe not in 1.6, but in a future version of Cyclone, is modularizing the schema. So having a base schema, but the base schema basically just includes all these other things. There might be a component schema, there might be a services schema, there might be a attestation schema, right? They're all separate. They all can be referred to locally, so no JSON LD type stuff. But not that I expect an answer now, but give that some thought, because this is something that we've been considering now that, I mean, the spec is getting fairly large at this point. And we're thinking about ways, how do we more easily maintain the JSON over time? And by extension, the XML as well, if XML carries over.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that at all. It's a good question. On that last point, we actually say in our requirements, like, you're going to use JSON. Like, we don't even consider the XML. Just because of all the rest of the tooling of using JQ to be able to like smash other properties in and update. Like, we wouldn't have. I mean, I don't know how we really easily do that with the XML tooling that exists today.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's a really good question. I think we definitely have struggled a little bit in that arena, like making things translatable to air gap. I think in that, especially when it comes down to, like, for us, a big part is, sorry, Jared Heck is bothering me about stuff. Is when it comes to like trees of SBOMs, like in
Yeah.
external refs, and how do we like suck all these dependency bombs up and be able to get them all in a consistent format to bring across. And that's where I think I kind of do that think about like protobomb and some of the work that's happening there. Like I totally agree with you. They call it lossless. It's not lossless, but I think as a way to like universally wrangle and find all these things and like kind of group them all together and get like a body of like S-bombs or other evidence together. Because for us, it's going to be pulling in like encoded attestations and getting that body together and like gluing it all together. Something that's like universal to do that. That is still going to be maybe not perfect, but translatable to CycloneDX at the end is going to be nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of where I'm trying to get to is, yeah, that's going to be a problem that we're going to have to try to solve. Right now, we basically rewrite the CycloneDX, retranslate it as we move it across.
Yeah,
so we keep original bombs, and then we have like our consolidated bombs that have a whole bunch of other stuff in them about how we move things.
Okay. Very good, Ian. I'll let you go. Yeah. Always a great conversation.
Absolutely. I look forward to working on the user guide.
Me too. Me too. So, yay. All right. Have a great day.
All right.
Cheers.
You too. Talk to you later.